Hi guys, Amy here. I just wanted to check in with you all and provide some feedback on last week's discussion. I think especially for our first week, this was a very successful discussion. You guys came up with some good ideas in your original posts responding to the multiple discussions, or excuse me, multiple intelligences activity prompt. And then you guys also bounced some interesting ideas off of each other in your comments and provided some lasting insights in your reflections at the end of the week. So in general, that is what I'm looking for. I would even suggest that maybe we could go further as we get into the conversation part when we get into some of the more thought-provoking discussions. This was a very personal discussion because of the nature of the prompt. It asks you to write about yourself. And so I think once we get into some more of the course content, the kind of back and forth exchange that I saw happening will go even further. So I look forward to that. I focused my comments midweek on some of the highlights that I saw in your original posts, so I won't repeat that here, but I do think that you guys came up with some awesome ideas for how you can tap into your individual strengths, things like how to use music or how to create a kind of spatial way of organizing your notes, or even ways to become engaged socially in your classes in order to increase your investment in them and therefore increase your chances for succeeding in those courses. So that was awesome. What I want to focus on here today, though, is the comment and reflection portions, because those are a little less straightforward and it sometimes helps to see an example of what I'm looking for. So now that we've done our first discussion, I think we can really pull from what we came up with this week to learn from and emulate as we move forward in the discussions throughout the remainder of the weeks this semester. So when it comes to the comments that you all provided for each other, I pulled out some examples of what I thought were strong comments. Remember I mentioned in midweek that a good comment either extends what the original writer has said or adds to it in some way, or asks a question that would extend the conversation in a different direction. So I have some examples here of statements that would provide a good addition to what the original post had said, while also providing a connection with that writer so that the two students can be engaged with one another. So for example here, I enjoyed reading about your learning styles. They correlate with mine. I definitely don't use enough time to reflect. So I'm assuming that this original writer had talked about reflecting on what they learned, and this writer felt that they related and maybe could pull from that strategy. This is another one where the writer's doing a good job making a connection between me and you. I find your comment about associating sounds with specific topics very interesting. I've noticed that certain songs make me remember very specific moments and activities that I've done while listening to that song. And I think this is something that is kind of universal. We've probably all had this experience where we hear a song and it reminds us of the activities that we were doing when we were listening to that song a lot. And so if you listen to a particular song while you're studying, chances are that song, if you listen to it over and over, might make you remember, if not only the act of studying, but what you were studying at the time. And so that could be extremely useful for you there. Here's one that kind of extends from a comment to a question. So I really like your thoughts on how you would stay sharp on your top intelligence strengths, but how could you go about improving on your other intelligence skills? And so I did notice that several of you talked not only about the strengths that you scored high on, but ways you could improve on some areas that you didn't score as high on. I want to qualify that by saying that we're not all supposed to be strong in every different area. The system is set up so that there are multiple intelligences and you really can't score highly on every single one. It is designed that your strength in several kind of correlates to your weaknesses in others, because we can't all be strong in every area. And that's the beauty of this kind of a inventory, is that it helps you see your strengths, helps others see their strengths, and then we can kind of celebrate our differences and learn and build on each other's strengths so that we all come together as a team that is complete, even though each individual brings their own unique strengths to the table. So I do think it's worth considering how might we go about maybe not improving on the other intelligence skills, but at least how to negotiate success when there are times that we may struggle, or how do we use our strengths to help us succeed when we're faced with a maybe required type of skill that we aren't as intelligent in. So I would think maybe not so much about trying to improve upon the things that we're lacking, because we can't be good in everything, but at least how do we use our strengths to help us overcome or negotiate our weaknesses. Just a few more I want to highlight here. Places where we have good connection between the original writer and the person leaving the comment, and questions. So, for example, I think maybe the thought of hearing other people on TV helps you feel like you're not alone. That could really help if you're a social person. Maybe you're the kind of person who likes to go study at a coffee shop. Even though it's noisy, it's kind of like background noise, and I think that's what this writer's talking about here. These next couple of classes, I think really I wanted to wrap up with because they highlight what is so important to me this semester, and that is helping foster these social interactions and our engagement with the course on all levels, be it between myself as the professor and you as the students, you as the students with each other, you as the students with the content, myself as the professor with the content, and every area in between. And so these couple of suggestions about how you can maybe be successful, particularly in an online environment, I thought were interesting. This is a good example of a place where, you know, we tend to think of as an online environment as maybe lacking something, but in a sense it has its own unique strengths, and so you have a little bit more flexibility. And so I think it can tap into the needs of a diverse student body a little bit more than a face-to-face traditional classroom can. And then this was just beautiful for me. I had to pull it out because it is just such a truth and such a profound insight to come from a student, especially in the first week of class. You hit the nail on the head when you said listening helps you learn from others, because that is absolutely true. You cannot learn from others until you listen. And as we know, we learn most of what we learn from other people. So I also want to talk a little bit in depth about the response portion. Being that this was our first week, I think you guys did an awesome job with the response, but there are a couple of things I'm looking for and a couple of notes I want to make on how you guys can negotiate that portion. So this first example here, for me, I appreciated reading the survey suggestions and my colleagues' responses to the exercise because it showed that we were not all unlike each other, and that humans can learn a lot from one another. For example, the student that scored high in kinesthetic intelligence stressed the importance of movement and activity to help them operate ideally. The common grounds we share in our individual intelligence we each excel in made me feel this exercise was beneficial and helped unify the class. So a couple things. First of all, I just like what it says because it said that the exercise helped unify the class, and of course that was my goal, so I feel awesome that somebody has called that out here. But what I really liked was not only does this reflection convey what the person learned from doing the exercise, but a couple of examples of places where they read something in another classmate's writing that helped them learn. And that is absolutely what I'm looking for in the response. The students that scored high in kinesthetic intelligence stressed the importance of movement and activity. That is a synthesis of multiple posts that you saw from your classmates, and it pulled it together to form some conclusion about the discussion as a whole, and that is really high-level thinking. I was really glad to see that. Now let's look at this example. After looking at several of the posts, I've come to the conclusion that many are comfortable and even agree with what the assessment said were strengths and weaknesses. I think that most had some great insight on what they were already strong in and what other areas need to be improved upon. I think it's great to see the interaction going on between my peers, and most were positive and encouraging comments to the original, either agreeing and expanding on what the person said, or some would offer a completely different approach that maybe the writer hadn't thought of. And this is a really good insight too, because this is exactly what I said at the beginning of this screencast. I mean, these are the two things that good comments do. They either agree and expand on, or they offer a completely different approach that the writer hadn't thought of, but they do so in a respectful way. And they're not really attacking each other, but just giving insight on strengths and weaknesses. So I think that is a really important point to be emphasized. I also like that this one points again to the interaction going on between the peers, because that was one of my primary goals with this discussion, is just to get you guys interacting with each other as you start to think about ways that you could be successful in this course. And so again, the things that I'm looking for in the response portion would be some kind of synthesis as to what you saw in general in the post that you read, as well as specific examples that illustrate the generalities that you are referring to, and also, of course, what you learned and a little bit of reflection on what you think the significance of the exercise was and why it was important that we did this week. Okay, I just want to point out a couple of other things. Places where the discussion was particularly lively and kind of took on a mind of its own or a direction of its own. That's really what I want to see, just like I would have happen in a face-to-face class when my students start talking to each other and then someone responds and then someone else responds, and it's kind of like a conversation going on from one person to the next throughout the class, and all I really have to do is call on people and make sure everyone gets a chance to speak. That's what I saw going on here in Brandon's thread. We have Brandon's original post, we have a couple of comments from people like we have from Mariah and Rebecca and Devin. And then as we get down further, we get a comment from a student and then Brandon responds. And then it just kind of takes off from there to where, you have the original, then a response to the response from the original writer again. And so, you could even envision a third or fourth person jumping in here and continuing on like we kind of see down here. And that's, again, what I'm really looking for, when the conversation can just flow, when you say things to each other and respond back and build on the conversation that way, so that what you've written in the original is really just a jumping off point. And that is kind of the ideal structure that I see moving forward with these discussions. That said, however, I also want to point to logistically the way I had intended for the reflections to work is that the reflections would be included in a reply to your own original post. And so it's fine that the majority of you posted your reflections in new threads here for week 1, but in the future, when you go to do your reflections, go back to your original post and click reply to yourself. And I would do it not to one of the comments you received, but to your own original thread. And that way your reflection will kind of appear way down at the bottom of your entire thread. It will encompass everything that's been said above that, as well as the other threads in the discussion overall. An example of that would be down here in Jeremy's thread. I noticed he was one of the few who did provide his final reflections in a reply to his overall thread. So let me just see if I can find that here. I don't know why I lost it. Suddenly there it is. Okay, so you can see we have Jeremy's original post. He's got a comment, and then he provides his reflection at the end in another comment or in another reply to his original thread. And so this, I would like this to go a little bit more in depth, but in terms of just the formatting, this is more what I was going for. But I certainly won't take off any points for that this week. That would be really unfair. I just wanted to point out that it all kind of flows that way a little bit better, so that these reflections aren't just loose here in their own threads, and they're kind of tied to that writer a little more closely with their original post. Okay, so I think that about sums it up for me. Again, this wasn't the most content-heavy discussion. I more just wanted to see you guys interacting with each other, and that's what you've done a great job with. Let's continue building on those skills for this week's discussion, which will be quote and paraphrase, which is the first content we will really assess, and it's very important for your summary essay that you're working on for this unit. All right, well, as always, let me know if you have any questions about anything, but good luck with week 2. Thank you.